Why is it so nerve-wracking to try to individuate from a narcissistic family system? Why is it so hard? Why does it generate so much anxiety? And why do we oftentimes end up going back to the old dynamics? Hi, my name is Tariana Rocha. I'm a therapist, and I've been helping people individuate from narcissistic family systems for about a decade now. If you're trying to find your own voice in such a family, it's oftentimes very hard. For most people, it's very hard. And for some, honestly, it's impossible. There's a lot of reasons for this. If you've been raised without boundaries, then we've normalized this. And we will consider having our own boundaries a form of betrayal against our family system. When we try to individuate, the system will react as if it were one organism. And social emotions such as guilt and shame will be used to force people back into their roles. Basically, the system depends on you acting as if everything is okay and not really rocking the boat so that everybody knows what to expect. So everybody can keep on being enmeshed and keep on functioning as if it were just one organism. On top of this, we are all biologically wired to fight for belonging. And even those of us who don't comply, we may find ourselves just reacting against our system, which is also not the same thing as following our own true voice. To react against something in order to control instead of being controlled, dominate instead of being dominated, is not the same thing as finding out what your true core values are, the ones that you would have if you weren't just reacting to stuff. But there's another thing that happens that doesn't get mentioned a lot. And what happens is when we do what the family system wants or when we react against it, we have a framework that is our model for how reality works. It allows us to see ourselves, life, the world, and other people in a specific way. And this actually generates a type of comfort because we know what to expect. When you start questioning everything you've ever known, it kind of feels like your personality is disintegrating. It feels like reality is disintegrating. It can get very confusing very fast. We can feel a whole lot of anguish, and our anxiety levels go through the roof. When we're feeling a lot of inner anxiety, our defense systems will actually try to make things easier to deal with through dichotomous thinking. This is black and white thinking. Essentially, it's going to put all of reality into two categories. And this is a way of simplifying things so we know what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. But dichotomous thinking does not really appreciate the nuance of life and certainly doesn't allow us to go through the naturally ambivalent process of trying to figure out what our own true voice is, especially in the face of so many different messages that don't really ring true inside of us, but that we don't know how to decipher or know what to do with.
Hey guys, if you're getting any value from this video, then download your free PDF, Break the Chains, 10 Steps to Stop Your Narcissistic Parents' Control. You can find the link in the description box.
In this dichotomous thinking, we might keep alternating between trying to hear and follow this inner voice that is surfacing inside us and kind of begging for us to pay attention to it and getting scared out of our minds and going back to just thinking, you know what, I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm just going to keep things as they are. In personality disorders such as narcissism or borderline, this is known as splitting, but you don't have to have a personality disorder to get into this black and white dichotomous thinking. The reality is that true growth happens in the gray area. It happens in uncertainty and in taking one step after the other as you pick up the pieces of your imploded personality and grain by grain, you try to analyze what is actually aligned and not aligned with your core values. This is an uncomfortable, slow, step by step process, which, as I mentioned before, generates an enormous amount of anxiety. As you go through this process of analyzing every little bit of what you thought was real and trying to figure out whether it sits true with what you're trying to build for yourself, you will find that some things really do make sense to you, but other things are the opposite of what you need. Either way, it can take years to differentiate between the psychological prison that was built inside of you that you call a personality, a sense of self, or a view of the world, and that which is really aligned with what is best for you, that which would truly be capable of helping you identify and satisfy your needs. This inner voice that's trying to pull you towards becoming your true self or individuating is the only authority in the whole world that knows what you actually need. But we feel kind of crazy in following this voice that only we have access to. Because it's not just our family system that will tell us we're wrong. It's not just our family system that has taught us to mistrust our inner voice and our individuality. The culture that we're in itself will most of the times around the world, regardless of the culture that you live in, tell you that it's better to just bow your head, follow the rules, and not stand out too much. The thing is, this isn't as safe as it would seem, especially if you're dealing with toxic relationships with family members. You may be okay now, or maybe you're not. Maybe you're already falling apart. But think about what your self esteem, self image, and your physical health and your life will be like in 5, 10, 15, or 20 years' time. Who will you even be? What's going to happen to you if you consistently ignore your boundaries? If you're following things that don't really make sense to you? If you keep doing things that are misaligned with your core values? If you don't even know how to identify your needs, much less satisfy them? If you keep ignoring your failing mental and maybe physical health? If you keep distancing yourself from people and things that are actually good for you, but that maybe your family doesn't approve of? What's going to happen if you keep following the wrong career, friend, or romantic life choices? What will happen then? So, when I talk about this inner voice, it's not just an inner voice, it's actually the part of your mind that is wiser. We have our conscious mind and our unconscious mind. Our conscious mind can only process a very limited number of stimuli per second. Our unconscious mind not only keeps our whole physical body working without us having to give it conscious cues, but it's also connected to our gut feelings about things. It knows what is and isn't aligned with our values and needs. It's really the only part of us that has a bigger picture, like a bird's eye view of everything that we need. What's right and wrong for you? What an ideal life would look like in your situation. This is all information that your unconscious mind has access to and tries to communicate to you through this inner voice and through intuition. The process of individuating from a toxic family system is synonymous with surrendering to this invisible intelligence of your unconscious mind. If it sounds scary, it's because it is. It's also because you were taught to mistrust it. But what I'm telling you is that you're never going to have a sense of self. You're never going to fill the inner void. You're never going to have emotional stability. You're never going to know what you actually feel and think about things. You're never going to find out what you actually need in order to be healthy and happy unless you surrender to listening to and also obeying this inner voice. What I'm telling you to do is to discount the other voices that just tell you to keep the status quo, no matter how scary that gets. We often feel dumb or crazy for doing this. But once we learn how to normalize following our inner voice and really judging it to be the only true authority in our lives, we find what our talents are. We make sense out of life. It starts having meaning. We have inner stability when the world is falling apart around us. And we tap into this amazing core of resiliency, courage, and strength that we didn't even know we had. So push through. Deal with the ambiguity, the uncertainty, the ambivalence. Tolerate the anxiety that all of this generates, knowing that you're learning how to build a solid inner axis that will be a true foundation from now on. Resist the dichotomous thinking of believing that if things don't change instantly or make sense instantly, if uncertainty doesn't dispel into something that's crystal clear immediately, then that means you need to go back to the way things were before. Immature minds cannot tolerate ambiguity. They go back to dichotomous thinking. But as we mature, we're able to tolerate uncertainty and keep taking steps as we follow this inner voice and build a reality that actually makes sense for us and that can actually contain all of us. So as you watched this video, I'm sure your inner voice told you to pay attention to something. I said a whole lot of things, but there was certainly something that caught your attention more intensely, something that made more sense to you, something that you want to delve into deeper. What was that something? This is your inner wisdom telling you what you should focus on in order to be able to individuate. Let me know in the comment what was the most relevant thing that was mentioned in this video or that popped up in your mind as you listen to me. I hope to see you soon. And I do hope that you surrender to this inner voice.